Nicole Huntsman from moderncosmic.com. I've got your weekly astrological forecast for the dates of January 4th through the 10th. Hopefully you've had a nice New Year's. We're going to ring in this new year of 2016 with this forecast. We've got a lot of exciting things happening this year. We're just going to cover the things for this week. I'm going to title this forecast Sisyphus, or the little engine that could. It just depends on your perspective. This is definitely going to be a year with some interesting retrogradations happening. So we'll get into some of the first ones that will be happening. We've got Mercury and Jupiter both going retrograde this week. But let's get into the details of the forecast and see how it might play out for you in your life. All right, some key events that are happening this week. I'm going to go over them very quickly, and then we'll just go through our day-by-day forecast per usual. We've got Venus moving into the sign of Sagittarius this week, along with the moon. So we'll be having some interesting aspects being made to those two. We have Venus conjunct Saturn this week there in Sagittarius, along with the moon. The moon will come and kind of sweep by them as Venus is moving to conjoin, is approaching to conjoin Saturn, and the moon will kind of come and pop in between the two of them and then pass them as Venus goes to hang out with Saturn. So, Venus is what we value, and when you bring Venus and Saturn together, there can be a little bit of a consolidation and a restriction of things relative to money and pleasures. In Sagittarius, this might be even just a philosophical thought, that kind of thing. We also have Mars entering Scorpio this week. So Scorpio traditionally is ruled by Mars and really likes being in Mars. This gives us Mars an extra added punch. And remember, Mars when we're looking at forecasting with mundane astrology, or even as it's transiting, through your chart, Mars is an activator. It's sort of like I've said before, it's the spark that lights the fire underneath the cauldron, so to speak. So having Mars in Scorpio, it is a very happy, strong, powerful Mars. And Scorpio deals with, remember, things that are hidden. Scorpio deals with even violations of trust. It deals with people who maybe encroach on our boundaries a little bit too much, or people who try to possess us or contain us or own us, okay? So it's these themes and these sort of intense emotions of jealousy and compulsion and obsession can come up with Scorpio. So having Mars in Scorpio is going to bring out more of a intense emotional reaction. And in particular, when we have the moon moving into position where it's making aspects to that Mars. So we're going to keep an eye on that this next few weeks while Mars is cruising there through Scorp. Okay, also, of course, we have Mercury going retrograde this week. So Mercury has been cruising along in Capricorn and has somewhat slowed down lately as it's been preparing and stationing to go retrograde. Mercury will go retrograde once it hits 1 degree of Aquarius. We'll then start moving on backwards, back through Capricorn to about 14 degrees of Capricorn. We'll talk about that more on the forecast for Wednesday. Along with Mercury, we have Jupiter going retrograde as well. Jupiter, of course, has been in Virgo. It's at about 23 degrees right now. So we will talk about what this means for you, how it might be affecting you. I also highly recommend that you take a look at my Jupiter square Saturn video that I put together to see, you can specifically see which house placement Jupiter and Saturn are falling into. Right now, Jupiter and Saturn are not squaring one another, but as Jupiter goes retrograde, it will be catching up with Saturn. They'll be forming another square. So it will be helpful for you to take a peek at that video to see which areas of your life will be affected by this particular square that's upcoming. We've also had just recently in the nation's chart, and I'm speaking for the United States since I'm a citizen of the U.S., we have had Pluto move into the second house. The second house is our house of our resources. It's our house of our financial liquidity. It has to do with our economy. It's what do we value as a nation, so much so that we're willing to hold on to it. Okay, so it can even cross over into sort of our national values and our, for example, our cultural values, the things that we value, like our museums, things like that, and our holdings, our antiquities. Okay, so it's any possessions that we possess. The Smithsonian would be an example of a second house institution that's national. It's owned by the nation, but it's something of value. Okay, so it's also our stock market. It's all of the financial instruments you can possibly think of, stocks and bonds and money market accounts and whatever you can think of that has to do with investing your resources. But remember, this is on a national level. Pluto, the great transformer, the planet that has to do with the death and rebirth of things, people, places, etc., is moving into this house, and it will be there for the next 15 to possibly up to, like, it depends on, I've got to look at the ephemeris, but up to 20 years. So this is a big change for our country, and this is a new chapter. Then, of course, our separating Uranus-Pluto square, it's going to be joined by our sun, our Capricorn sun, along with the little Capricorn moon that will be happening. So we'll get into that a little bit and talk about how that might also be affecting the world around us as well as yourself. So let's get on with our weekly forecast, and we'll get started with Monday the 4th. All right, Monday, January 4th. Hopefully I'll get this video up before Monday. January 4th, we've got our Capricorn suns. They're at 13 degrees. It is opposite the nation's sun, which is 13 degrees of Cancer. That Capricorn sun is moving through the first house right now of our national chart. But it is moving to make a conjunction with Pluto. This is a time when questions of power, who's in power, will be sort of at the forefront. And when it's in Capricorn, this is big power. This is large institutions and it's governments, okay? It's institutional power. So you may be seeing, especially with our country, because it is going to be opposite our sun on its way to conjunct Pluto, some calls to power, I feel like this week's going to be a week where the United States will be taking some diplomatic action, supporting allies, not necessarily directly being involved in, big military pushes, other than things that have already been going on. It'll just be a little bit more where we're playing an assisting role, where we're like saying, good job, go get him. Okay, anyone who has the cardinal signs on their luminaries, which would be your sun or your moon, your angular houses or your angles. So rising sign, really. Your rising sign is but also your IC, your descendant, and your MC. Or if you've got any of the personal planets, which would be Mercury, Venus, or Mars, if you've got any of those in sort of the teens of Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, okay, you guys are going to be affected by this sun conjunct Pluto. You need to look at what types of aspects are being made, okay? If you're a Capricorn, then you yourself, let's say you're a sun in Capricorn, that Pluto, or that sun comes to conjoin that Pluto. It's going to not only conjoin that Pluto, but it's also going to be conjoining your sun. If you have a sun that's in those teen degrees, those in the middle of Capricorn. So let me give you an actual, let's say from 10 to 17 degrees, okay? For you, this is your personal power, okay? So your will to power will be questioned somewhat when the sun comes to activate this particular point in your chart. Depending on what the planet is, you've got to look at the planet, and you've got to look at, if it's Venus, it's what you value. So it could be you feeling like someone is trying to take from you your affection. So it could affect your love life. It could feel like someone's trying to control your money or trying to dominate you in some way, or violate your personal boundaries relative to the things that you value, okay? So just combine sort of this idea of sun coming to Pluto, the sun lights something up, it gives it energy, it activates it. And then in your birth chart, you've got to just look at that planet that's being personally, it's being activated. Look at what the key words are for it, and think of, on the high side, transformation, and on the shadow side or the lower side, like I said earlier, violation. Okay, so violation of those things. Also, another way to think of this is, if you look at those planets, those planetary keywords, imagine these parts of your life feeling exposed. Like I said, violated, but probed kind of unnecessarily, or unsolicited probing, that kind of thing. So if it's your Mercury, your mind, your thoughts, your Venus, it's what you value, etc. Also on Monday, we've got Mars moving into Scorpio. So it's going to be at 0 degrees, the very beginning of Scorpio. So you guys who are fixed signs, so these are, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius. You guys are going to have Mars activating you. Now, when I think of the planets that sort of get us to do things when it comes to transits, Mars is definitely the big getting you to do things planet, and especially Mars and Scorpio. Now, I like to think of Mars and Scorpio as, I mentioned this before, when a werewolf gets shot by a bullet, right? It hurts the werewolf and he's like in pain, but he's able to do whatever werewolves do to squeeze the bullet out of his body. Okay, he can push the bullet out. Mars in Scorpio kind of has this quality. So depending on what it's activating in you, if you have something hidden that's painful that you need to be releasing and letting go of, Mars is going to activate that. Mars is also kind of like a knife. Mars rules weapons. So it's not going to be a particularly pleasant experience if you don't want to let go of whatever it is that ails you, okay? It's better to just get rid of it before it festers and becomes infected than just holding on to it and hanging on to it, okay? Bear that in mind. So let it go. Think of what it is you're holding on to. You need to work on letting those things go this week, or it will be pulled out of you. It'll be exposed, because that's just how Scorpio, that's how this works. And especially the fact that our moon will be in Scorpio, so it's going to conjoin that Mars. Okay, and so the focus is really going to be, when you have Mars and the moon together, they are like the two big activators. The moon, because it's so quickly moving through the chart, and it has to do with those instinctive responses. And when it moves into a certain position, it just sort of brings out, like I've mentioned in videos before, I don't believe that the planets are causal, but if there was a planetary body or a celestial body that had a causal relationship to the Earth, it would be the moon, because we do know the moon affects our lunar, or the lunar cycle affects our tides, right? So to me, of all of the planets, if there was one to sort of pay attention to as far as how it affects you physiologically and emotionally, it would be the moon. I don't make any claims that it is a causal relationship, but I do know myself personally, when it's a full moon, I can't sleep. I was born on a full moon. I had most of my babies when the moon was either full, new, or a quarter moon. So that's interesting to me. And for whatever reason, my body is very much like it responds to that. So you may be the same way. And when you've got the moon in Scorpio, that's a pretty intense moon as is. It has to do with transformation and these deeper fears and these emotions that sometimes keep us doing things compulsively because we're afraid to look at what's the monster under the bed kind of thing. And this is the time to lift up the blanket and look at the monster and let it out. Now, also in this mix is you've got our Mercury is in Aquarius. So Mercury's in Aquarius this week for just a few days, and then it gets up to 1 degree of Aquarius, and then it retrogrades back into Capricorn. But building up to this day that it actually stations to go retrograde, you've got Mercury, Moon, and then you've got, of course, Mars, all kind of in this mix. So, and it's an Aquarius, it's going to be an Aquarius Mercury retrograde. We'll talk about that in a moment, what that means. But for those of you who do have things that you're trying to keep secret or hold on to or prevent other people from knowing about, this is really a week where things will come out into the open. So you might as well just get it out of you before it gets taken out of you by this particular transit that's going to be happening, because these are fixed signs, and when they want to take care of something, they take care of it. And Mars and Scorpio, my mom came, she has a Mars and Scorpio natally. I've been using this example all week. She came to my house, my basement was a disaster area, just like 2 years of, you just kind of throw shit down there and maybe organize it when you have time, and my kids go down there and play, and the dogs go down there, it's just a mess, right? She came and in one day has that cleaned the whole thing, organized it, cleaned it, washed all the blankets that were down there the kids were playing on. Just that's Mars and Scorpio. It takes care of business. So it doesn't mess around. It's very potent. And so when it's making aspects in your personal chart where it's affecting your, like I said, depending on the planets and the house placement of that Mars, it's going to make changes in that part of your life. So you need to be ready for it. Be ready to let go of things. We've got Venus in Sagittarius now. Venus was moving through Scorpio for a bit. Now they're flip-flopping. Now you got Mars in Scorpio. Venus is in Sag. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. That's our Jupiter that's going to be going retrograde later this week, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But that Jupiter in Virgo, that's about analysis. It's about, sort of having an opinion about something, but being almost kind of worried about its opinion in a sense. It's a mutable sign, Virgo's mutable. So it's like, as I've been saying before, it is those people who are analyzing and crunching the numbers and worrying about things. And you can look at that metaphorically as well. Now, this Venus in Sagittarius, Venus is what we value. And Sagittarius has to do with expansion, growth, wisdom, the wisdom of the world, religion, all the things that have really been on the front burner this past 6 months or so, really even just this past 3 months, I would say. So we're going to just continue the themes we've sort of been working on. And as Jupiter goes retrograde, see, Sagittarius is usually a very in your face sign, right? And expression. It's very in your face. It's extrovert. It extroverts what it thinks. When the ruler goes retrograde, Jupiter becomes more introverted. So people are going to start doing more reflection upon, well, wait, is that really how I feel about this religious belief or this spiritual belief? Is this really how I feel about it? Depending, again, where is Jupiter in your chart? Where's Venus? The transiting Jupiter, the transiting Venus, where are they at? Which houses are they in your birth chart? And what are they making aspects to? Okay. So you have to blend all these things together. That's why you can come to me and I can do a reading for you, and it's much easier. So Jupiter is conjunct right now. It's conjunct to the North Node, more or less. It's not an exact conjunction, but Jupiter is going to be going retrograde on Friday. It will be coming, it's within orb right now. It's conjunct the North Node in Virgo. This is a time, especially for those of us here in America, because of where it falls in our national chart, which is the 9th house. This is a time where we are re-examining our national myth. We're re-examining what it means to be an American, the American dream. This dream is very different for many different types of people. Some of us, like myself, for example, I am the descendant of, immigrants. I have got most of my family, well, I should say 3 of my 4 grandparents had parents who either immigrated here or, and the rest had been here. So, but several generations back, right? And that's a lot of Americans. I'd say it's probably the majority. And then you've got Native Americans who were here before any of us got here. And then in their dreams, definitely different. And you've got those who are more contemporary immigrants, and you have those who are first generation immigrants, or the children of immigrants. Okay, so all of our dreams are slightly different. This to me, and I'm speaking as an American from my POV, but this is a time where we are re-examining that. What does it mean to be an American? And we'll continue to see this in the news, but also you need to see how this affects you and your birth chart. Where does 23 degrees of Virgo fall in your birth chart? My birth chart's in my, I think it's just barely fell into my 2nd house. Yeah. And so for me, this is my house of values, my house of money, so perhaps I'm asking questions right now about making money, like what's more important to me when it comes to how I make my money. Even, your North Node, if you have, the North Node is the soul path, but it's the world's North Node, so it's kind of like the direction the world's going right now. The North Node is moving retrograde right now. So, look in your chart, just look at the keywords, make it as simple as possible. And Virgo is always about, it's about analysis. To me, it's always about analysis. That's why Virgos are known as being perfectionists or worriers. They have this ideal picture in their head of how they'd like things to be, and they're trying to name things so that they will kind of all line up and make sense. So see in your life where it is that you're trying to make sense of things. Jupiter is there to help you, to expand you, and to help you bring order to that part of your life. So take advantage. Even though Jupiter's going retrograde, it's going to be going retrograde for quite a while, and we'll talk about this with Friday's forecast. But for now, just be prepared for it. It's already slowing down, so you're already going to be feeling the effects of it. Of course, we still have Saturn and Sagittarius, so this continues to be these same sort of themes of. It kind of comes out in 2 different ways. It's either sort of fears around. It's like the builder of fears around the differences that we have from one another. It's also the forward-focused planner, that's Saturn, who's looking at, and the forward-focused is Sagittarius, but who's looking at the future with a vision. So it's visionary planning, okay? So, and it's also this idea of telling the truth, being truth tellers, all right, and guardians of the truth, guardians of hope. These are all expressions of Saturn and Sagittarius. So, of course, the mutable signs this year are the ones that are taking all the interesting hits. So those of you who, like I said, are Gemini, okay, so if you need to write this down, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces. And not just sun signs. Remember, it's your moon, it's your rising sign. We all have these somewhere in our chart. So look at where they fall and see if you have planets in the mutable signs. That part of your life is going to be transmuted this year. It's going to experience, whether it's being slowed down, whether it's being introverted, you're having to look at whether it's your Mercury, the way you think, maybe it's your worldview, maybe it's your actual religion this year. Maybe you're going to take a look at that, it could be your relationships. It could be a lot of different things. So look in your chart to figure that out. Tuesday, January 5th, we've got the sun moving into position. So you've got, if you were to make a chart of Washington, D.C. at noon, noon, of course, you've got Pluto up here, and the sun is just about to come into conjunction, with Pluto. In our national chart, if you were to do the transits over the national, the Sibley chart is the one that I use for the United States, you would see Pluto in the second house of the United States, and you would see the sun coming to conjoin that Pluto in the second house. Remember, this is our house that has to do with our national resources. It has to do with what we value. This is our stock market, our economy. This has to do with our actual resources themselves that we buy and sell and trade. So having Pluto making some sort of entrance into this house means we are about to undergo a huge transformation in this part of our country's identity. In my mind, I can see us undergoing quite a few different changes. This will be here for a long time. So I can see our currency changing, our stock market changing, the way that we do business changing as far as actually using currency rather than, I do see us moving to a barter. You'll see more people bartering and using trade as a form of getting what they want rather than cash. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how things change and hopefully improve. We can let go of Pluto. Also reveals things that are corrupt. It reveals, just like the bullet in the werewolf metaphor I was giving you. Pluto, see, it shows us where there are things that are infected, and it forces them out. So it's not always painless, right? It's a cathartic experience. And so for our country, we're going to continue to see some economic changes in the way that our country does business. Also, though, this is that Pluto is power. So ultimately, in the end, if we're able to release those things that have weakened us, in the end, hopefully it will make us a stronger country financially. But it is going to be a bit of a doozy. It's going to be there for a while. Like I said, 15 to 20 years. I need to actually look at the ephemeris to see exactly how long it's going to be moving through that second house. All right, now particularly on Tuesday, when the sun's moving to light something up, it's like turning on a flashlight in a cave, all right? It's conjoining Pluto in that second house. There will be some sort of an exposure that takes place. I would not be surprised if it's something to do with the stock market, our financial solvency, maybe, especially because we've got Saturn in Sagittarius right now, because that's the ruler. That's the ruler of Capricorn, which is where the sun is at, where Pluto's at. So Saturn in Sagittarius tells the truth, right? So we have all these things kind of happening at once, and you've got that Mars moving into Scorpio, which, remember, is sort of activating that opening up the wound or pushing it out into the light. So I do have a feeling there'll be some sort of announcement being made this week that has something to do with our, whether it's the stock market or taxes or some regulators of some kind coming out. And it actually could even be like with our military and the spending that's happened overseas, the military spending. Maybe we could receive some information about that, or there could be like whistleblowers of some kind who are saying that money's not being spent the way it should be spent, or maybe there are private contractors that are being hired, that are being paid more than somebody thinks they should be being paid, or something like that. So it's some sort of exposure of some kind of financial corruption or corruption of the nation's resources. The resources include the land that we live on. The fourth house is really the land, but I mean really the minerals and the commodities that come out of our land are part of the things that hopefully we value. So you may hear something about those being corrupted or something that's been hidden relative to those that pops to the surface. Mars in Scorpio, so it has moved into the United States national 11th house, which is the house of our allies and our friends. So these would be like our international friends. It's also the house of legislators, because it's like the house of groups of people. So our Congress, they would fall in that house rulership. Okay, so having Mars here in Scorpio says there's going to be, again, an exposure of some kind relative to whether it's the legislators or it's at the same time going to be trining our national Venus, which is 3 degrees of Cancer, so which is in the 7th house of foreign affairs and diplomatic relations. So I kind of feel like there's going to be some sort of battle cry in a sense, or some sort of, I feel like, again, like I said earlier, I think something's going to be from the legislators perhaps you know what it could be? They might even just be taking action to get some funding and resources to the foreign field, but there's going to be some sort of tug of war about how that's been exercised. Okay, how that power has been exercised. Like just people who disagree with the funding or the finance or the the military spending that's been spent so far, and those who are in support of it, so like the Hawks and the Doves, fighting a little bit over financial spending on military spending on the coalition force effort, over in Syria. All right, Wednesday, January 6th, I'm continuing to call this truths that can no longer be hidden. We've got Mercury on this day that is going retrograde. It's going retrograde at 0 degrees of Aquarius by noon Washington, D.C. time. So it does move into Capricorn. It spends most of this retrograde in Capricorn. It bumps all the way back. It ends on January 26th, and it goes all the way back to like 14 degrees or so of Capricorn. By the middle of January, we'll be back at where we started from. So we'll be kind of clear of the retrograde. Okay, let's talk about an Aquarius retrograde. And don't mind me, I do have to look at my notes because I want to make sure I don't forget anything here. Okay, with this Aquarius retrograde, we've got Mars and Scorpio. So Mars just moved into Scorpio, so they will be squaring one another. At the same time, we've got, okay, so with Mars and Scorpio, remember that activates things, and remember it exposes things. So to me, when you've got an Aquarius Mercury, this is combining communication, and this is combining anything that uses an electron to communicate. So it's like electronic communications. So this to me is whether they're shorting out, whether they're losing data, whether there are breaches in security, whether there are exposures of private data, but in particular, military personnel, police departments, agitators, perhaps rethinking their forms of electronic comms and being a little more creative with how they're, or thinking they're being creative, but then getting kind of caught in the process. Also, it should be noted that the Islamic State, or ISIS, or ISIL, or whatever the hell they're calling themselves these days, IS, I've seen all these different names lately, they do have Saturn moving into their third house of communication. So Saturn restricts things and slows things down. It's also authority figures. And Saturn is Sagittarius moving into that house, to me, sort of suggests they really have, and they've got Pluto on their IC, which is like their homeland. Pluto's like bombs, so like they're really just getting the crap kicked out of them right now. So in my mind, its third house also rules kind of brother-sister relationships. So I kind of feel like there's going to be factions dividing up, and then the authority of ISIS trying to kind of clamp down on that and stop the bleeding. But I think they are going to just kind of crumble. Doesn't mean that they're not going to go. I mean, these people are still going to be around. You can kill the leadership, you can cut off the head of the snake, but this is the kind of snake that can regrow a new head, or maybe like 3 heads, or like turn into 3 separate snakes. So that's what's going to happen with this group. I don't have dates on that because I haven't looked, but it is a coming. Meanwhile, by the way, it's just a side note, we do have stuff today about Saudi Arabia. I know I heard about the Iranian cleric, the Shiite cleric that was beheaded, or I'm not sure if I think he was beheaded, executed by the Saudis because of claims that he was involved in terrorist activity. Okay, well, I think that probably on the 14th of this month, 14th, 15th of January, Saudi Arabia will themselves, something's going to come out that week where it shows that they've actually been one of the primary supporters of the terrorist attacks that have been happening. Not only ISIS, but other terrorist groups as well. So we shall hear about that, I think, in this next, not this week, but next week. So this is a side note. Okay, so also back to what we were talking about this with Mercury retrograde. So now, Mercury retrograde, it happens several times per year. Okay, so Mercury retrograde is going to happen. You've been through it many, many times in your life. And people always blame things on Mercury retrograde that are kind of silly, or they'll blame things on Mercury retrograde when there isn't a Mercury retrograde, which is fine. But really, the way you want to think about it, especially when it's in Aquarius, this is going to deal directly with, in my mind, your electronic devices. So if you've got, it's also social media. If you've got stuff you don't want people to know about, okay, when you have Mars in Scorpio, which is the great, like, it's going to expose something whether you like it or not, squaring this Mercury as it goes retrograde, you might not want to be posting it, okay? Or you might want to remove it. If you sent messages that you don't want to have exposed, Do not do them during this Mercury retrograde. And if you've done them within the shadow, if you've done them within the last couple of weeks even, I would take care of business because it's going to be found out, okay? This also could enhance people's, cyber stalking, people stalking other people because, Scorpio is obsessive. And if you've got someone who's got a lot of fixed energy in their chart or fixed, rather, placements, they're going to be sort of this Scorpio will enhance their sort of obsessive compulsive expression of their personality. So when we look at that relative to Aquarius, that tells me people doing more cyber stalking. Cyberbullying could also be an issue, so we need to kind of keep our eyes out for that with our kids. Really keep an eye out for your children being targeted or bullied or having things that have been posted or the other kids post about your kids, and bullying incidents. That really worries me during this particular retrograde. Let's see. So if you've got any of the fixed signs on your sun, your moon, your rising, any of your personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, between 0 and like 3 to 4 degrees or so of the fixed signs. Okay. So Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. Okay. The Mercury retrograde is going to affect you. If it's your sun, it could be you personally. I wouldn't be signing contracts during this, especially if it was anything like an electronic signature was required for. And I would probably just kind of hold off on anything that required a high degree of security until this retrograde's over. Now, the good news is it's a short retrograde. It ends on, like I said, on the 26th, so it's not a long one. And by the middle of February, you're clear. It's kind of like after the retrograde, you might still see a few little incidences of things happening, but we're waiting for Mercury to speed back up to his sort of regular pace. So it's not as bad as when it's actually in the retrograde. So in my mind, you're kind of in the clear, as long as that Mercury is not being afflicted by other things in the transiting sky. So in your chart, look and see which house this Mercury is moving through, or houses if it's more than one, and look and see as it's making its movements, what planets, if it's conjuncting anything, if it is making aspects by, any of the major aspects, trines, oppositions, squares, pay attention to those planets. Those are the ones that will be most likely affected, and the house placements of those planets, okay? Now with this Mercury, it will also, so we've got that sun in Capricorn, right? And it's coming to conjoin Pluto. Okay. So, and this is going to be backwards on my screen because that's okay. Maybe it'll be the right way. Sort of. Okay. Because my screen flips everything. So then you've got this Mercury going retrograde now, and it's going to join up with that sun and that Pluto. Okay. So when that happens, it's going to be, I think that's going to be coming around, I have to look at the exact dates on that. But anyway, it'll be not this week, but it's coming up. That's when you got Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Capricorn is those in power, right? This is stuff coming out. This is going to be around the 13th, 14th. So this is going to be when, like I said, the Saudi Arabia, it lines up with their chart in such a way with their Mercury and with their, I believe, their rising. I think there's going to be some sort of something coming out about their involvement in supporting terrorists financially, all right? So whether it's through trade, whether it's through direct financial support, but I do think there is going to be something that hits the news that's going to be, pretty inflammatory and controversial, and it's going to be a little bit messy. So, all right, that's my take so far. That's my take on Wednesday in the retrograde. Let's move on to Thursday. All right, Thursday the 7th, I'm calling this cooling and separating. We've got the sun separating. So the sun came and conjoined Pluto, and now it's going to be moving away, separating from Pluto. So it's in Capricorn. That's definitely more of a cooler expression for the sun. It's more serious and likes to get business done. At the same time, we've got Venus approaching a conjunction with Saturn. It's in Sagittarius. So as I'm looking at my notes here, of course, Venus has to do with our desire. And in Sagittarius, it's this desire to be visionary. As it comes to connect with Saturn, Saturn's going to want to put a bridle on that. Here's all my brainstorming fantastic ideas. Saturn wants to say, okay, now let's edit that list and make it into a workable plan. Okay, so that's what we're going to be seeing more of as a whole, because this is our cosmic weather that we're all under. It's raining on all of us. There will be a little bit of an interest in conservatism. Doesn't mean that we're all going to become Republicans. But it just means there will be an interest in looking to the past to see how things were done previously in order to inform the future, all right? And trying to sort of maintain a little bit of a balance that feels safe and that feels conservative, okay? Now, at the same time, Donald Trump, this is going to be making some aspects to his birth chart. I think that his campaign may make some sort of a statement this week, or there's going to be this general kind of change in direction where they become a little more conservative in their communication. He's going to continue to be honest, as you know, that's his style of speaking his mind, but the rhetoric is going to be toned down. I think there's a good chance he's going to have some of his financial backers and supporters that are a little bit worried, that he may feel a bit of pressure from them to sort of tone it down, okay? And overall, sort of the conservative values will be on the rise during this transit. It's a short transit, but you know, it's there. Okay, and especially with the sun being in Capricorn, and you know, also of course our Mercury going retrograde and being Capricorn, Pluto's in Capricorn. You know, it's an overall sort of valuing conservative, keeping things safe, keeping things organized and planned, and you know, a lot of that can be sort of fear based because it is Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which rules fear. So. At any rate, we'll keep an eye out for that on Thursday. Friday, January 8th, I'm titling this Follow That Rabbit. I couldn't think of a better title. That's maybe not the best title for Friday, but Jupiter does go retrograde. It's Jupiter's at 23 degrees of Virgo and has been slowing down and will go retrograde on Friday. So Jupiter will retrograde until May 10th. That's a long time. January, February, March, April, May, right? Like 4.5 months or so. By January, February, March, it will be in position to again square Saturn, that Saturn in Sagittarius. So we're going to revisit some of the things that we saw when Saturn and Jupiter were squaring each other before, which was, remember, is that rhetoric. Because Jupiter is going retrograde, to me, this is going to have a slightly different flavor to it. And it could be, I haven't even looked at the entire ephemeris for that week when it does, or those few weeks where it does make that square. But I highly recommend you look at my video where I did a video on Jupiter-Saturn squares and where they would fall in your chart for this year. Take a look at that video and see which house it falls in for you, which houses I should say, to really understand how this is going to be affecting your life. Jupiter's expansion. Jupiter in Virgo, though, is sort of like creating a plan. It likes to analyze things. It likes to get really clear on all the details. And then Saturn and Sagittarius. Sagittarius is about the big picture and not about the details. And Saturn is about creating a plan. So they are working together in kind of a wonky way. And the way it ends up coming out is in my mind, it's people just kind of going, yeah. Okay, well, this is how I sort of see things, and my way is right, and I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. Okay, so, but when Jupiter goes retrograde, it feels to me like it's going to be a time where people are re-examining that a little bit. There's a little bit of humility thrown into the mix with this being Virgo, and really all the mutable signs have a humility, sort of a humble quality to them, especially Virgo, though, and Pisces. But I think people are going to be sort of eating, what's that called? Eating crow a little bit more during this retrograde, Jupiter retrograde. So I think that when these same topics come up again, these topics of religion and spirituality and personal meaning and existential meaning, people are going to be a little slower to jump on the I know everything bandwagon. I might be wrong, but that's the way I see it. Those of you who have your mutable planets in 12 to 25 degrees, I'm going to be making a video where I talk about what this Jupiter retrograde will feel like for you. So, you know, if it's making any kind of aspects to you, I'm going to do it planet by planet. So it's your sun, your moon, Mercury, blah, 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 blah. You know, how it's aspecting you and how it's going to sort of bring things out in your expression and how you can use Jupiter to help you grow through this rather than, like, for example, I have my Mercury's in Virgo at 18 degrees. So this will definitely be affecting my Mercury. It's a great time to study. It's a great time to sit and review the things for me that I have learned from and to sort of brainstorm all the things I'm looking to learn in the future, but it's not a time really to move forward with those things. It's more about looking inward at your inner value system relative to like spirituality, existence, what is important to you. And also, Jupiter is the teacher, so it's the inner teacher, the inner wise man or wise woman that you have inside of you, sort of having a little conversation with that person, and planning with that person, and then come summertime, putting those plans into action, right? Something that's important to note too, this theme of self-sacrifice, and that would be Virgo, and this theme of the vision, that would be Sagittarius. There has been this interesting thing I've been seeing with clients lately, especially I've had so many mutable clients, but this idea that they have a dream, they have something that they're wanting to enact in their life, but they feel like they have to give up a big part of who they are to get there. That is kind of what this year is about. It's one of the themes of this year. So which part of your life do you sort of have to sacrifice in order to get the bigger thing you're really wanting? I feel like this Mars and Scorpio at the beginning of the year is going to sort of force a lot of us to face some things we need to let go of, whether they're relationships, whether they are a job, or something in your life that you've been holding on to. It's going to really make you evaluate it and let it go so that you can move on to the thing you're supposed to be moving on to. This part of your dream. Okay, so sort of this cathartic removal at the beginning of the year, so that you can then, we've had a lot of retrogrades this year that are all kind of at the same time. There's going to be a lot of this process of clean. It's like having a wound. Okay, I have this wound on my hand, right? So I have to clean it out twice a day, rewrap it twice a day. It's this. That's what it is. It's cleaning it, wrapping it, letting it rest, cleaning it again, wrapping it, letting it rest. That's going to be this year. Kind of over and over again. So you need to figure out in your life which part of your life needs to be cleaned out, where's the wound at that needs to be cleaned, so that you can heal and move on and get full use of your hand again with a stupid bandage on it. Okay. Saturday, January 9th, we've got Venus conjunct Saturn in Sagittarius, and this is conjunct the national ascendant. I think the United States will take a little bit of a step back, a little shifting down into a lower gear in the Middle East. And the reason is, I think as this, conflict that's happening between the Saudis and the Iranian government and the people, the sectarian conflict that's happening, it's not, we don't have a dog in the fight. That's nothing to do with us. And I think it's in our best interest to step back slightly, just to sort of move out of the way while these guys duke it out with each other. And I think when you look at the national chart, to me, it looks like that's what we're going to be doing. Venus rules peace, and Venus is conjunct Saturn in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is our rising sign. So Sagittarius is very optimistic, and it's idealistic, and it's naively idealistic, right? It's like us thinking that we're the world's babysitters. Having Venus conjunct Saturn and then move into the first house says that we will be seen as peacemakers of some kind. And at the same time, there's an activation of our natal Saturn. So to me, by Scorpio, that Scorpio Mars, to me, we will be taking a little bit of a downgrade, shift down, and sort of passing the mantle on to those who are there in the Middle East who should be fighting their own fight. Saturday's kind of a big day. In our chart, it's kind of missing things. It's separating. So I don't know if it's going to be that we'll make an announcement, but there will definitely be a little downshift with our military action. We'll still be there, but ISIS, I think, is going to be contained somewhat, and they're still going to be, they're like a chicken with their head cut off. It's going to be running around and being all spastic, but their head's cut off, okay? And I think we got the brainstem, so I don't think we're going to have the headless chicken. Well, we may have not got the brainstem. We may have a headless chicken running around for a bit, and that's okay, but it's going to die eventually. No one feed it, and it's going to die. Just don't put any food down its gullet. Other than that, so I do think the United States will be kind of backing off a bit. Saturday, as I say, usually I've given everything for the week. Those are the main events for the week. I didn't go over the moons this week. You're welcome to take a peek at those and see what you think if you want to share any of that with me. I just have to get on with other things today. So on with Sunday, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, Sunday, January 9th, we've got that Capricorn stellium happening. It's a day where I think it'll be a little bit more of what we saw on Saturday, a little bit more of the same. So the moon is in Capricorn, and anytime you've got the moon somewhere, that is definitely an activator. And remember, we are a Cancer country. Many of the NATO countries are countries that have strong cardinal placements. Saudi Arabia is also a Capricorn country, which is opposite our sun. Something will be happening. I do not think it's us. I think that it will be activities elsewhere. So just be a little bit more of what we already saw on Saturday. I think if anything, it's kind of like we're the policemen a little bit, and the peacemakers, the peace bringers, or whatever. That'll be our kind of the theme for the week. Like, oh, we took care of our business. Now you guys take care of yours. In your personal life, if you're someone who's got strong Capricorn in your chart, or if you've got if you're like me, I've got Libra, Aries, Cancer, that Capricorn stellium finishes that Grand Cross for me and it activates and it lights up my Sun, Moon, Mars stellium, Sun, Moon, Jupiter stellium as well. So, it'll be a good time for me. It's in my 5th house, which is that house of creativity. And I actually plan on doing a lot of writing in this next week or so, a couple of weeks. So it'll be very helpful for that. It can really give energy and activate and focus you. Because in Capricorn wants to plan its work and then work its plan. So take advantage of that and let me know how everything has been affecting you. The Mercury retrograde. Let me know how and of course that Mercury will be, in Capricorn on Sunday, joining all of this. So it's a good time for reflection. Not a great time to start a new project. Please download everything, save everything that you're working on. Don't be publishing things or sharing things online that you don't want everyone to know about. If it's something secret, if it's an email or a message, be extra cautious because or even credit card information, your security, your secure information, be really cautious with that this week, more so than usual. I hope you have an awesome week, and let me know if you have questions, and let me know about your week and how it has gone down and for you. Okay, have a good one. See you later. Bye-bye.